They ignored me for 14 years, called me a failure, and forgot I existed. Family comes first, they said when they finally noticed I was gone. I smiled, walked away without a word, and that day, I moved something worth $50 million to a place my parents, sister, and their guilt could never reach. Chapter 1: The Invisible Son. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the cold glass of his bedroom window, watching his parents' black Mercedes pull away from the driveway. Again. They were heading to another one of his sister's violin recitals, another moment of pride that didn't include him. At 14, Marcus had grown accustomed to the sound of doors closing without him, conversations ending when he entered rooms, and the particular silence that followed his attempts to share good news. I got a B+ on my history test, he had announced at dinner the night before, his voice barely cutting through the clatter of silverware. His father, Richard, had looked up briefly from his phone, where he was reviewing quarterly reports. "That's nice, son." The words felt rehearsed, empty. His mother, Elena, was already discussing weekend plans with his 17-year-old sister, Sophia. "Mom, the youth orchestra director wants to meet with us about summer programs in Vienna," Sophia said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Oh, darling. How wonderful. We absolutely must discuss this properly." Elena's face lit up in a way that Marcus couldn't remember ever being directed at him. Marcus had set down his fork, the B+ suddenly feeling worthless. In a house where Sophia brought home academic excellence awards and first-place trophies, where she spoke 3 languages fluently and played violin like an angel, his small victories were mere whispers in a thunderstorm. The truth was harsh and simple: Marcus was ordinary in a family that only recognized extraordinary. While Sophia glided through advanced placement courses and collected scholarships, Marcus struggled to maintain solid BS. While she performed at Carnegie Hall with her youth orchestra, he sat in his room, writing stories that no one would ever read. While she effortlessly charmed everyone she met, Marcus fumbled through social situations, awkward and forgettable. His parents had never said the word failure to his face, but Marcus felt it in every delayed response, every forced smile, every time they forgot to ask about his day. He was the afterthought child, the accident that came too late in their perfectly planned lives. Chapter 2: The Final Straw. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March, during what would become Marcus's last dinner with his family for 5 years. "I need to tell you all something," Marcus said, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had been working up the courage for weeks to share his news. Richard didn't look up from his tablet. Elena continued cutting her salmon into precise, small pieces. Only Sophia glanced at him, mildly curious. "I won something," Marcus continued, his voice stronger now. "The state writing competition. First place in creative fiction for my age group." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Finally, Elena looked up. "That's nice, sweetheart." Her tone was the same one she used to acknowledge that he had remembered to take out the trash. "It comes with a scholarship," Marcus pressed on, desperate now. $5,000 toward college, and they want to publish my story in the state literary magazine. There's going to be a ceremony. "When?" Richard interrupted, finally giving Marcus his attention. "This Saturday at 2. Richard and Elena exchanged a look. "Oh, honey," Elena said, her voice taking on that particular apologetic tone that Marcus had learned to dread. "Saturday is Sophia's regional competition. We've had this planned for months. We'll be in Philadelphia all weekend," Richard added, already turning back to his tablet. "But congratulations. Really. We're proud." Proud. The word fell flat, hollow. Marcus looked at Sophia, who was now scrolling through her phone, completely disengaged. No one asked about his story. No one wanted to know what he had written about or how it felt to win or what this might mean for his future. "I wrote about us," Marcus said quietly, though he knew they weren't really listening anymore. "About a boy whose family forgets he exists." Elena murmured absently. "That's interesting, dear." Marcus stood up from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was louder than his 5 years of achievements combined. He walked to his room, closed the door, and began to plan. Chapter 3: The Great Disappearance. Marcus waited until they left for Philadelphia. He had 3 days to prepare, 3 days to execute the most important decision of his young life. He wasn't running away, that was something desperate children did. Marcus was leaving with purpose. He had been saving money from odd jobs for 2 years, accumulating a modest fund that his parents had never bothered to ask about. He withdrew everything, $2,847. It wasn't much, but it was his. He packed only essentials in a single backpack: clothes, his laptop, his journal, the letter announcing his writing award that his parents had never asked to see. He left behind everything that connected him to the Chen family's vision of success. The expensive violin they had bought him, hoping he might follow in Sophia's footsteps, the designer clothes Elena chose for him, the academic planners Richard insisted would help him organize his potential. On his desk, Marcus placed a single sheet of paper with 4 words, "I am not lost." He took a bus to Portland, then another to Seattle. He had researched emancipated minor laws, youth shelters, and job opportunities. At 14, he was small for his age but mature beyond his years, a maturity born from being ignored, from learning to rely only on himself. Chapter 4, The Years Between. Marcus's transformation wasn't immediate or magical. The first year was brutal. He slept in youth hostels, worked washing dishes in diners, and spent countless nights hungry and afraid. But he also discovered something his family had never given him, the possibility of being valued for who he was, not measured against who he wasn't. At 15, he talked his way into a job at a small independent bookstore in Seattle. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a 70-year-old former English teacher who recognized something familiar in the serious boy who read voraciously during his breaks. "You remind me of the kids who sat in the back of my classroom," she told him one afternoon. "The ones who had the most to say but never thought anyone wanted to listen." Mrs. Rodriguez became his first real mentor. She paid him fairly, gave him a small apartment above the bookstore, and most importantly, she read his writing. Under her guidance, Marcus began submitting stories to literary magazines and contests. Rejections came frequently, but so did acceptances. By 16, he was a published author with pieces in 3 national magazines. By 17, he was managing the bookstore and had completed his GED. By 18, he had saved enough money to start college and had won a full scholarship to the University of Washington based on his writing portfolio. His parents never found him because he never hid. He simply became someone they had never bothered to know. Chapter 5, The Phoenix Rises. At 19, Marcus published his first novel, The Invisible Boy. It was a raw, unflinching look at family dynamics, about a teenager whose parents' emotional neglect drives him to forge his own identity. The book hit bestseller lists within 3 months. The praise was overwhelming, with critics calling it a devastating and beautiful examination of modern family dysfunction. Marcus chose to publish under his full name, Marcus Chen. He wasn't hiding anymore. The literary world embraced him completely. His second novel, published when he was 20, won the National Book Award for Fiction. By 21, he was being interviewed on national television, profiled in major magazines, and invited to speak at universities across the country. He bought a beautiful apartment in downtown Seattle, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The walls were lined with books, many of them his own in various languages. He had everything he had ever wanted: recognition for his talent, financial security, and most importantly, a sense of his own worth that no one could take away. But the success couldn't fill the particular void that his family's absence had carved in his chest. Late at night, when the interviews were done and the acclaim quieted, Marcus sometimes found himself wondering about them. Did they know? Did they care? Had they even noticed he was gone? Chapter 6, The Search Begins. Richard Chen stared at the computer screen in his home office, his hands trembling slightly as he read the same paragraph for the 4th time. The article was from the New York Times Book Review, a glowing profile of the year's most promising young authors. But Richard wasn't focused on the praise for Marcus's literary talent or his meteoric rise to success. He was staring at a single line buried in the biographical information. Chen grew up in Boston before leaving home at 14 to pursue his writing independently. "Elena." Richard's voice cracked as he called for his wife. "Elena, come here. Now." Elena appeared in the doorway, worry creasing her features at her husband's tone. Sophia, now 22 and fresh from completing her master's degree in music performance, followed close behind. "Look at this," Richard said, pointing at the screen. "Look at the name." Elena leaned forward, adjusting her reading glasses. Her face went pale as she processed what she was seeing. "Marcus Chen, but that's not, it can't be." "It is," Sophia whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh God, it's him. It's really him." The 3 of them stared at the article in stunned silence. The successful young author in the photograph bore little resemblance to the awkward 14-year-old who had left their house 5 years ago. This Marcus was confident, articulate, acclaimed. This Marcus was everything they had never believed he could be. "When did he leave?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't remember," Richard admitted, and the confession hung in the air like an indictment. "I can't remember the exact day our son disappeared." Sophia was scrolling through her phone frantically. "There's more. So much more. Mom, Dad, he's famous. He's won awards. His books are everywhere. How did we not know?" The answer to that question was simple and devastating: they had never looked. Chapter 7, Desperate Measures. The Chen family's search for Marcus became an obsession that consumed their every waking moment. They hired private investigators, reached out to his publishers, called every hotel in Seattle. Richard took a leave of absence from his law firm. Elena stopped attending her charity functions. Even Sophia put her burgeoning career on hold. They discovered the note Marcus had left, still sitting on his desk after 5 years, gathering dust in a room they had unconsciously converted into storage space. "I am not lost." The words stung with their simple truth. Marcus hadn't been lost, they had simply stopped looking for him. The private investigator they hired, a stern woman named Detective Sarah Morrison, was brutally honest in her assessment. "Your son doesn't want to be found," she told them during their third meeting. "He's living openly under his own name. He's not hiding. The question isn't where he is, it's whether he wants you in his life." "He's our son," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "We love him." Detective Morrison's expression was skeptical but professional. "I've read his books, Mrs. Chen. Both of them. I've also read the interviews he's given. He talks about growing up feeling invisible in his own home. He describes parents who were physically present but emotionally absent. Does any of that sound familiar?" Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "We made mistakes. We know that now. But we want to make it right. Making contact is possible," Detective Morrison continued. "But I want you to understand something first. This young man has built an entire life without you. He has friends, mentors, a career, a support system. He's not the hurt 14-year-old who left your house. He's a successful adult who chose to leave his family behind. You can't approach this expecting him to just welcome you back with open arms." Chapter 8, The Letters. They started with letters. Elena spent weeks crafting the perfect words, throwing away draft after draft. How do you apologize for 5 years of not noticing your child was gone? How do you explain that love existed but was never properly expressed? Richard's letters were different, formal, almost legal in their precision. He outlined the specific steps they were taking to make amends, the ways they had changed, the therapy they had all begun attending. Sophia's letter was the most honest. She wrote about the guilt that had eaten at her since the day she realized Marcus was gone, about how she had always known she was the favorite but had never understood the cost of that favoritism to her brother. The letters went to Marcus's publisher, his agent, his apartment building. None were returned, but none were answered either. Months passed. The Chen family fell into a routine of desperate hope and crushing disappointment. They read every interview Marcus gave, bought multiple copies of his books, attended literary events in distant cities hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Elena found herself lying awake at night, remembering moments she had previously dismissed. Marcus at age 7, proudly showing her a story he had written about a dragon who just wanted to be noticed. Marcus at 10, asking if she wanted to hear about his day at school while she was on an important phone call. Marcus at 13, trying to share his excitement about joining the debate team while she was helping Sophia prepare for an audition. All those moments when her son had reached out, and she had been too busy, too focused on other things, too convinced that his needs could wait. Chapter 9, The Confrontation. The confrontation finally came at the most unexpected moment, in the most unexpected place. Richard was browsing in a bookstore in downtown Boston, not looking for Marcus, just killing time before a business meeting, when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Hello, Dad." Richard turned, his heart stopping. Marcus stood 3 feet away, wearing a simple black sweater and jeans, holding a cup of coffee. He was taller than Richard remembered, broader through the shoulders. His face had lost all traces of boyhood softness, but his eyes, those were the same eyes, dark and intelligent and now filled with something Richard had never seen there before, power. "Marcus." The name came out as barely a whisper. "I got your letters. All of them. Mom's, Sophia's, yours. You never responded." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "I've been thinking about what to say for almost a year. What do you say to parents who spent 14 years treating you like background noise, then 5 years not even noticing you were gone?" Richard felt tears he hadn't expected welling up in his eyes. "We're sorry. God, Marcus, we're so sorry. We made terrible mistakes." "You made choices," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Every day for 14 years, you chose to prioritize Sophia's achievements over my existence. Every time I tried to share something with you, you chose to look elsewhere. Every time I needed support, you chose to give your attention to someone else." "We love you," Richard said desperately. "We've always loved you." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Love isn't a feeling you keep locked in your heart, Dad. Love is action. Love is attention. Love is showing up. You never loved me, you just weren't actively cruel to me. There's a difference." The words hit Richard like physical blows. "What can we do? How can we fix this?" "You can't," Marcus said simply. "I'm not 14 anymore. I'm not that desperate, hungry kid begging for your approval. I don't need you to love me now. I learned how to love myself. Chapter 10, The Reckoning. I'm successful, Dad. More successful than you ever imagined I could be. More successful than Sophia, if we're keeping score the way our family always did. My books are read by millions of people. I make more money in a year than you make in 5. Universities invite me to give speeches. Critics call me brilliant. I have everything I ever wanted, everything I dreamed of while sitting alone in my room, listening to you praise Sophia's accomplishments in the next room. Richard was crying openly now. We're proud of you. So proud. Please, let us back in. Let us be part of your life. Marcus studied his father's face for a long moment. Proud of me? You're proud of me now? Where was that pride when I won the state writing competition? Where was that pride when I needed it? We didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You didn't know because you never listened. You didn't know because I was invisible to you unless I was creating problems or costing money. Marcus set down his coffee cup and pulled out his phone. He showed Richard the screen, a photo of a reading he had given at Harvard the previous month. The auditorium was packed, 1,000 people hanging on his every word. See all these people? They see me. They value what I have to say. They appreciate my talent. I spent my entire childhood desperate for that kind of recognition from my own family, and now I get it from strangers all over the world. Marcus, please. I'm not angry anymore, Marcus continued, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. Anger was what I felt at 14. Anger was what drove me to leave. But anger requires energy, and I have better things to do with mine now. What I feel now is nothing. You're strangers to me. Well-meaning strangers who happen to share my DNA. Richard reached out, instinctively trying to touch his son's arm. Marcus stepped back smoothly, not aggressively, just creating distance. I don't hate you, Marcus said. Hate would mean you still have power over my emotions. But I don't need you either. I don't need your approval or your pride or your love. I spent 5 years building a life without you, and it's a good life. It's a life where I matter. Chapter 11, The Final Choice. Your mother has been in therapy, Richard said desperately. We all have. We've learned about emotional neglect, about the damage we caused. We know we failed you, but people can change. Families can heal. Marcus considered this. Maybe they can. But healing requires participation from everyone involved. It requires trust. It requires the belief that the relationship is worth saving. And I don't believe that about us. How can you say that? We're your family. No, Marcus said quietly. You're my relatives. Family is something different. Family shows up. Family listens. Family makes you feel like you belong. You never gave me that. Richard looked around the bookstore desperately, as if the shelves of books might contain some argument, some magic words that could fix 5 years of absence and 14 years of neglect. What about Sophia? He asked finally. She wants to see you. She's been devastated since she realized you were gone. Sophia was 17 when I left, Marcus replied. She was old enough to notice I was hurting. She was old enough to speak up when you and Mom were ignoring me. She chose not to. That's not entirely her fault. She was a kid too, and you raised her to believe she was the only one who mattered. But her guilt now doesn't erase her complicity then. Marcus picked up his coffee cup again, a signal that the conversation was nearing its end. I'm going to ask you something, he said. And I want you to think carefully before you answer. In the 5 years since I've been gone, how many times did you actively look for me before you found out I was successful? Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between them. That's what I thought, Marcus said. You didn't come looking for your son. You came looking for Marcus Chen, the award-winning author. You're not proud of me, you're proud of my accomplishments. You're not sorry I was hurt, you're sorry you missed out on claiming credit for my success. That's not true, isn't it? Marcus challenged. If I was still washing dishes in a diner somewhere, still struggling and unknown, would you have hired a private investigator? Would you have written all those letters? Or would you have convinced yourselves that I was better off without you? Richard couldn't answer because they both knew the truth. Chapter 12, The Ghost Remains. Marcus drained his coffee and looked at his father one last time. I want you to go home. I want you to tell Mom and Sophia that I'm fine. Better than fine. I want you to tell them that I don't need their apologies or their guilt or their attempts to rewrite history. I want you to stop looking for me, stop writing to me, stop trying to insert yourselves into my life. You're really going to walk away from us forever? Richard asked, his voice breaking. I walked away 5 years ago, Marcus corrected. You just finally noticed. He turned to leave, then paused. I will say this, I'm grateful. Your neglect taught me self-reliance. Your indifference taught me to value the people who do choose to see me. Your absence taught me that I don't need anyone's approval to be worthy of love and respect. So thank you, I guess. You made me stronger by failing to be what I needed. Richard watched his son walk away, noting the confident stride, the straight shoulders, the way other customers in the bookstore looked at him with recognition and respect. Marcus Chen belonged in the world in a way that the awkward 14-year-old never had at home. As Marcus reached the door, Richard called out desperately, "I love you, son." Marcus paused, his hand on the door handle. Without turning around, he said, "I believe you do. But it's too late for that to matter." And then he was gone. Epilogue, 5 years later. Marcus Chen's third novel, The Ghost Who Became Real, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. In interviews, he spoke eloquently about the power of chosen family, about the mentors and friends who had shaped him, about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who see your worth. He never mentioned his biological family. The Chen family never stopped loving their son, but they learned to live with the particular grief of having lost someone who was still alive in the world, thriving without them. Richard kept every article written about Marcus in a scrapbook he never showed anyone. Elena bought his books but couldn't bring herself to read them. Sophia went to one of his readings, sitting in the back row, and watched her brother captivate an audience of hundreds with the same storytelling talent she had dismissed as a child. She left before he could see her. Sometimes, late at night, each of them wondered what might have been different if they had just paid attention when it mattered. If they had listened when he spoke. If they had celebrated his small victories instead of taking them for granted. If they had made him feel like he belonged in their family instead of like an inconvenience they had to manage. But Marcus had learned a truth that his family never grasped: love offered too late is just regret wearing a disguise. And he had spent too many years begging for their attention to waste any more time waiting for their apologies to heal wounds they had caused but never bothered to acknowledge until he no longer needed them to. The boy who had once been invisible had made himself impossible to ignore. The ghost had become more real than the family who had failed to see him when he was right in front of them, desperate to be loved. And in the end, that was enough.